colleague these days. But my interaction with him started almost 30 years back when I joined this department as a graduate student, an MSc student, and he was teaching us genetics and cytogenetics. And then I joined him as a PhD student, and there have been many interactions with him since that time, which now I sometimes think of the questions which I asked him were very naive and they were just ridiculous. But he never showed that what you are talking or what you are saying is something which is not relevant. And Professor Lakhotia, there are many laurels which is found everywhere on the net. So I'm not going to tell about. I'll not talk about all those about those things. But what in my journey of scientific life, I have seen many teachers, many scientists. But there are teachers who may not be very good scientists, and there are scientists who may not be very good teachers. What stands out about Professor Lakhotia, we call him Sir, he is a combination, or he has both these qualities. He is a very good teacher and he is a very good researcher. And the one thing which we as students feel, that we don't have to, there are no inhibitions. We can talk to him about anything freely, whatever we want. And this cytogenetic section, as we see today, has been a hard work, or it has developed because of lot of hard work and sacrifice from the teachers who were present over here, and Professor Lakhotia being one of the pillars on whom still this section stands. So today I would like to just know from Professor Lakhotia how he came over here, and how this major establishment could be established. So I would just
Cytogenetics didn't start with me. This group was started by Professor Ray Chaudhary when he joined as head and professor of zoology department in 1960. He came from Calcutta. This department was set up in 1921. And Professor A.B. Mishra had continued head continuously for almost 40 years or so. When he retired, the university invited, this was not selection, he was invited to come as head and professor of zoology. And when he came, he really transformed the department. Besides other areas, he also set up cytogenetics group. And he was trained in Drosophila genetics, but he had also, after coming back to India, after his PhD in Edinburgh, also learned cytogenetics, cytology, chromosome work and so on. And he started both the things here. And so the cytogen section that started here is remarkable in the sense that this was the first lab in this department. We started human lymphocyte culture in 1960s.
Yeah.
Before any other place started this. And he, besides doing chromosome work in various mammals, then he also took up studies on snakes, large things. The beginning of his DNA fingerprinting started in this laboratory here, in this section here. And he also started Drosophila. And then some of his students became faculty here. Professor Tikaram Sharma, Professor J.P. Gupta, who was an authority on Drosophila taxonomy, Professor B.N. Singh, who did his PhD, Mercy Jacono, who was our colleague. She worked on DNA, on mutations in Drosophila, and then she moved to DNA repair in mammalian cells. Then Professor Ray Chaudhary left this department in 1970, once his term was over, and Professor Tikaram Sharma took over as the in charge of this group. Raji Raman joined the department in 74 sometimes. I was appointed as reader in 1976.
you came later than
Yes, and what is remarkable is when I came, this big room was empty space. Nothing was here. But what Professor Sharma told me on my day one, Lakhotia, everything is yours. Don't think that this room is only yours. And that started the whole philosophy of sharing. And he told me, and it was very clear, no permissions, no, and I think that's what we have maintained till date, that all the teachers we have joined, some of you have joined later on, and we think we are all equals, no senior, junior, no hierarchy, no questions, no permissions. Everything is open, and that's what I think we have. we have been extremely lucky that all the colleagues who have been here have absolutely, without any hesitation, contributed to this togetherness, kind of a large family. And equally remarkable is, even students who had completed their PhD in 1977, 78, still feel that this is their home. They come here without any hesitation, without any formal invitation, and we continue to be interacting. And that's what I think has been one of the most remarkable things. Students from these labs have spread out world over and have made names in their own way. For example, Professor Sen Pathak, who is a cytologist, worked on chromosomes in cancer, is a word authority. By looking at chromosomes, he can say which cancer it is. He has been in Houston for many years. And likewise, there are many others who have acquainted, but this group, we feel very happy. We can't get anywhere else this atmosphere of togetherness, of free exchange. Students who come in from different parts of the country, I don't think we have ever had any problem that because things are open, somebody takes an undue advantage of this. They all get into this, and I think one of the things that we feel very happy when we look back today, that so many students have come and gone, but I think besides learning good science, they also learn certain good parts of life. And that's something, so when I came here, there was already two faculty here working on population genetics or on taxonomy, but my work was more on gene expression. And so I had to set up everything. And it has been slow evolution of getting things, getting facilities, like something that now of course they are not visible, but earlier every equipment that will come with its packing, the packing will be converted to furniture. And we will make tables. Many tables are still there, which if one looks inside, one will know it's all packing material. And so slowly we had to build up that. And being in university system with little money, I think where we could make a difference, and I definitely say with great satisfaction, was the sharing of facilities. Any one of us, when writes a grant, doesn't want to duplicate that, okay, I should have it in my lab, there's no my lab or his or her lab. It's all common facility. And therefore, and interestingly, students also become equally responsible. Many colleagues in BHU or elsewhere say that, okay, how can you leave things so open? Students can misuse them or the things can go bad. I can tell them with great confidence, our students don't do this. We give them confidence and they return back that confidence, like our confocal facility, which I'll tell you briefly about confocal also later on, how it came into being. Is open 24 hours, and it's remarkable. JICE people who are maintaining this are worried that it has not gone back, because then they don't have the way to earn money for repairs, because it has been working non-stop. So likewise, we have built a facility slowly by putting things together. And by doing that, we ourselves evolved. Like I was trained to do polyethylene chromosome work, simple autodigraphy technique, which has now disappeared, but that's it. But this, over the years, we have learned newer techniques, taken up newer ways of doing things. Electrophoresis was something completely unknown to me. We did it. Tapas, one of the early students, had to fabricate gel electrophoresis apparatus, gel drying apparatus, and discover that a gene doesn't make a protein. And that was in 1982, one of the first gene identified in this lab to be a non-coding one. And I'm glad I continued. When world over it was taken as junk or selfish, but I never did that, and we continued to work on that. So likewise, we fabricated things. Of course, in the process, I learned some bit of engineering. I'm an impatient. I can't wait things to be lying dead for some time. We do it. And I think that has been something that has really helped us in keep things going.
I'll just interrupt you for a brief second, since you said about evolving of this. So what is the kind of sacrifice that you thought you did for the sustaining of this setup?
Well, there was no sacrifice.
sacrifice.
There was absolutely no sacrifice. You see, it's like in a big family. There's no sacrifice. You're contributing, you're working on that, and in the process, you only get benefits. So for example, if Raji Raman could get something and I could get something together, each one benefits. Just as we all sit together to discuss student science, our science, and knowledge is freely exchanged. Students benefit, we benefit. So I don't think there's any sacrifice that somewhere where any one of us felt, okay, I did and I lost this. No, there's always been a gain. Never a loss.
So it's a total profit.
Yes, absolutely. It has been a profit-making business happening that keep on happening.
Exactly.
What you can call as politicking, because we were together, we could withstand and come out. I won't say victorious, but successfully. That okay, we could withstand all those things, and therefore that has been a great help. Say for example, so we developed facilities. We learned molecular biology. Professor Sharma organized a workshop. And that process, and I had spent about a few months in US learning myself bacterial culture and so on and so forth. But then based on that little understanding that we had, we could really become, I can say, recombinant DNA experts as well. We started doing DNA sequencing, and I feel very happy that this lab was one of the first to make transgenic Drosophila in India. When Moushami Mukherjee, she herself did microinjections and selected all that. So that's what I meant by evolving techniques. So we have learned in the process lots of techniques. In between, we did a lot of DNA fabricography, where we could measure replicons. Now, all this happened as the research questions kept on evolving. And so likewise, in the 90s, we begin to realize that, okay, to do more deeper cell biology, we need a confocal microscope. And so DST was at that time making a national facility of confocal microscope. The first one was set up in CCMB, Hyderabad, and I thought we should have one. So we made a proposal. There were some difficulties in forwarding it here, but ultimately it did go to DST. And what was surprising was the DST committee, when I presented the proposal, they said, why are you going for a simple confocal? You deserve the best. And I said, I'm afraid the cost is too high. And the committee said, don't worry with the cost, make a proposal immediately. And so immediately in half an hour, during the committee meeting, I had to make a proposal for a multiphoton. And DST approved that. And so this lab was one of the first in the country, or the first in the country to have multiphoton confocal microscope. That had its own problems. But anyway, we started to learn confocal. Yeah. And I've enjoyed learning it myself, so I can understand how it works, what are the ways to maintain it. And then in 2003, we got our new second confocal microscope, which has been the workhorse. Why it has been working non-stop is students take responsibility. And partly because I also know how to make sure things work well. Engineers come and, because they know that once they see this microscope and they can say that the microscope is working non-stop, it's a good sales point for them. So they come happily to if there's any small problem. And that's how it has gone on. And we have learned in the process many new things. Now we are doing RNA sequencing, we are doing protein analysis, which were something that I couldn't have thought of 30 years ago. But because it has been a continuous interactions, continuous questions, and everybody has been contributing, so we have been able to come that far. And the quest continues still.
हम लोग का इंट्रोडक्शन होता था, पूछा जाता था क्या करना है, तो जिन लोगों ने कैंसर पढ़ी है, कैंसर पसंद है, जैसे मेरे को भी माइक्रोस्कोपी ही पसंद थी, सेल बायोलॉजी, तो मुझे नहीं पता